So welcome to another video. Today we are going to be changing the brake pads on a Vauxhall Corsa. This is a Vauxhall Corsa 1 litre 3-cylinder engine. As you can see, I've removed the nuts on the wheel. I've loosened them already, and we're going to jack the car up now just using a standard car jack. Once we get the wheel high enough, you can see I've got my hand on it to see how much the wheel will move. The wheel will move in a minute, so should be able to get the wheel off completely. So there you see the nuts are now hand tight because I've loosened them previously. Get them removed and get the wheel out of the way so you can see the caliper and the brake disc, etc. There we go, the wheel's off now. Put it to one side safely. There you can see the caliper. So this, you're going to need a 13mm spanner. Now if you're using this on a different car, it may have different fittings. These are bolts which have a 13mm head on them. Others can have Allen keys and various different things. I like to tap it with a hammer because it helps loosen it, especially when you haven't got a lot of room there. Just give it a quick tap with a hammer, it should come off, and then they'll be hand tight. Say hand tight, you'll be able to pull them out with your fingers, put it that way. Do the same again at the bottom one. There's only two, so all you need to do is loosen the bottom one, get another tap with the hammer. Bit fiddly on the bottom one because you can't quite see. I'm accidentally hitting it the wrong way first time, so I probably made it a little bit more tighter than it should have been. Once it's started, you can get them out with your fingers. It's fairly straightforward. Don't forget to put them somewhere safe so you don't lose them. And all you need to do is give the actual caliper a quick tap with the hammer to help it loosen any dust, rust. Helps loosen it away from the brake pads, and there you see it just pops straight off. I like to suspend it on the disc there so that it's not dangling around or anything, because we need to get to the bleed nipple on it. First, what we need to do is use an 8mm spanner on this. So I'm using the ring end of the spanner. What I'm going to do is pop this on first, and I'm going to crack the nipple off and make sure it is going to turn before we go any further, because quite often these can just snap off if they've not been done for a while. You can buy new nipples for brake calipers, but you don't want it snapping off. I'm attaching my piece of tube. I have a brake bleeding kit, so I want the tube on to make sure any fluid flows into that and not all over the brake disc. Once you've done that, is tighten it back up, because all I've done there is made sure it's loose, and then tightened it back up. So I'm going to put a rag now onto the disc, and what we need to do next is winding the piston. So we're going to be using a winding tool for this. Need to remove that from the piston. It's just a thing, and what I do is I place a socket inside there. Now other pistons will be solid, so you can use the actual plate that comes with a winder. You see it's got little pins in the end. These usually fit in the actual piston and help it wind back in. Now a common mistake that you do with these winding kits is you have a plate that fits on the other end. Once you've got the other plate in that end, got this plate, as you can see I'm putting this out of shot there, but it'll come in shot in a minute. It's actually upside down, but I'm doing this on purpose now to show you what happens when you try and wind it in like that. Generally what happens is it just falls back out, so what you need to do is you need to flip it around. So I'm going to loosen the nipple there just so I can wind it in a little bit. Again, not forgetting to pop the tube on the end. Make sure that the nipple's open enough so you can get the piston wound back in. But as you can see, look there, it just dropped straight back out again. So what you need to do is you need to put it in the other way around. An interesting way of doing this is to put the plate in first, but as you can see, I've only got two hands. So what I'll do is I'll just wind it in a little bit and then get it back in, and it should start winding the piston back in once we get it sorted out. It's a bit fiddly, but get there eventually with it. It will go. There you go, it's gone in now. It's not like a bit of one-handed operation. It really is a bit fiddly, but if you're not, if you haven't got one of these, I would suggest getting one of these winding things, winding tools for winding the piston back in. So once you've got it in there, you can just start winding it and it'll start pushing the piston through. Again, making sure your bleed nipple is open and far enough open, because it'll let the fluid flow out. You should be able to see it start coming out of the tube. You can just about see it there. You can see the air bubbles coming through on the tube. Now this will help keep the airlocks out of the system as well. So when you're winding it in, it pushes the fluid through, and obviously once you've got the piston far enough in, you can lock the bleed nipple off, and in theory it should just keep the airlocks out, because if you just open the nipple, it'll all come back through in there. So once you've got it far enough wound in, is to lock the nipple off. And what I'm doing here is I'm removing the tube and then putting my finger over the top of the hole to stop any air getting back in. There's no worse than having a lot of air in the system, because your brakes just won't. So I'm removing any of the excess fluid, because again I don't want it going everywhere. And then I'm just going to place the caliper on top of the brake disc and just balance it while I get the pads off. So once you remove the tool, there you can see the socket inside. It's just a case of getting rid of the pads, and then we can reassemble the whole thing. Now a good thing to do is check your discs and make sure that the edges are all ground off. These are pretty okay, so we're just going to change the pads on. You can use a grinder on them just to grind them down a bit. Pads come out easy enough. You might have to tap them with a hammer again. But there you can see some springs on the ends, and you need to leave them in for these particular ones. Now there's only one way you can put the pads in, because there's a left and a right one. So you need to remember which way they came out as well, the old ones, so you know which ones to put back in. So once you've put them back in, you can see there's a lot more pad wear on these. They're brand new, a lot thicker than the old ones. So this will be a lot better, and of course for the MOT it will help it get through the MOT. Don't forget to put the plate back in the piston. And another little thing you can do is use some copper grease. Just dab it on to the pads and a bit on the piston. It just helps. It stops squealing and squeaking. You don't have to put a lot on. It's probably best not to put a lot on. Just enough to help it lubricate the back of the pads. The caliper will just fit straight back on. If you do need to wind the piston in a bit more, just wind it in a bit more, like I've shown you earlier in the video. Once you more or less got it in position, you need to put the bolts back in. Now what I do is put a little bit of copper grease on the threads. This will help you wind them in with your fingers. You need to jiggle the caliper around a bit and get it lined up correctly. And it's always best to use your fingers to get the bolts back in. Do not use anything like a ratchet or even these windy guns that people use, because you may strip the threads and you don't want that. Once you've got it started with your fingers, you need to wind it in as far as you can with your fingers. Don't tighten it up yet. Get the next bolt and put the next one in. Again, putting a little bit of grease on it, it'll help it go in a lot better. And again, locate the threads by using your fingers. You can feel them gripping as they're going in. Tighten it up with your fingers. Once you've got it as far as you can with your fingers, then you need to get your spanner again and start tightening it up. I like to give it another tap with the hammer just to give it a bit of torque, and again do the bottom one. You could use a torque wrench if you want, but most people on the drives probably don't own several torque wrenches and ratchets. Might just own a few basic tools, and you probably only need a few basic tools for this. So once you've done all that, you need to get the bleed nipple open again with the tube on. So again, this is a brake bleeding kit. It is actually one that can be used on an air compressor, but we're not using the air compressor today. I'm just using the tube. Remember to get some fluid into the fluid reservoir in the engine compartment. Make sure it's topped up. I have a special bottle, so what this will do, it will keep it topped up permanently. It doesn't overflow, it just keeps the right amount of fluid in. And then what you need to do is you need to press your brake pedal 3 or 4 times, and the fluid will start coming through the tube. It will get rid of any excess air. You can see a little bit coming through there. It is a very tiny amount. Like I said in the previous part of this video, what we've basically done is use the tube to stop the air going back into the system. So these brakes are more or less done, but we need to make sure that all the air is out of the brake system. And once you're satisfied the air is out of the brake system, then all you need to do is tighten it back up. Now if you're doing both sides of your brakes, it's best to do both sides of your brakes before you start doing the bleeding, and then just bleed them one at a time. And once you've got them all bled and set up, your brakes will work. Again, wiping any excess brake fluid off, and then you should be sorted. All you need to do is put your wheel back on, get your jack down. I'm using a torque wrench there to make sure the nuts are tight, and this needs a wheel trim, so making sure that the valve is in the right place on the wheel trim cover, and then just tie wrap it on and you're good to go. That's your car sorted out and your brakes done. I'm using a spanner, ring end of a spanner, to pull the tie wrap through there. Nice little tip there. Can be quite fiddly to get the tie wrap through, so if you just use the ring end of the spanner, it will guide it through. So there you go. That's how you do your brake pads on your drive. Hope you enjoyed the video.